They only knock on windows without curtains. I never cared much for curtains. My house sits at the far end of a quiet neighborhood where the streetlights are few and far between, and beyond my backyard is nothing but a long stretch of open field. With no neighbors peering in and no traffic cutting through at night, I always felt secure leaving the windows bare. I liked the openness, the glass like a frame to the outside world. But that feeling changed the first time I heard the knocking. It was just past 2 a.m. when the sound started, 3 sharp taps against the living room window. Not random rustling like wind through branches, not the scrape of a tree against the glass. It was deliberate. Knuckles. I froze in the hallway, every nerve in my body tightening, straining to hear if it came again. And it did. 3 more knocks. Measured. Patient. The kind of rhythm that told you someone knew you were awake. I crept closer, just enough to peer from the corner. At first, I thought my eyes were playing tricks on me in the dim light, but then I saw it, a tall figure outside, standing just beyond the glow of the porch light. Its body was thin, too thin, like it had been stretched out of proportion. The head was tilted at a sharp, unnatural angle, and though I couldn't see its face clearly through the glass, I felt its stare land on me like a weight. It wasn't moving, wasn't fidgeting. Just standing perfectly still, waiting. The knocking didn't stop. 3 more taps against the glass, louder now, sharper, like it knew I was watching. My instinct screamed at me to run, to grab my phone, to do anything, but all I could do was stay frozen in place, barely breathing. Somewhere deep down, some animal part of my brain understood that acknowledging it was dangerous. That's when it clicked, the rule. A memory surfaced from years ago, a drunken story told at a bonfire. They only knock on windows without curtains. That's how they choose. If you look straight at them, if you meet their face through the glass, they can come inside. At the time, I had laughed it off like everyone else. But now, staring at the thing outside my house, I didn't feel like laughing. The figure leaned closer to the window. I saw the pale outline of its hands pressed flat against the glass, its long fingers splayed unnaturally wide. Its skin didn't look right, too smooth, like wet clay. I squeezed my eyes shut and ducked down below the sill, hard hammering. For minutes, maybe hours, it kept knocking. Always in threes. Always waiting. The sound traveled through the walls, drilling into my skull until I thought I'd lose my mind. Finally, just as suddenly as it started, it stopped. The next morning, I drove into town and bought curtains for every window. Thick ones. Blackout fabric. I told myself that would be enough, that I had closed whatever invitation I had accidentally left open. But the following night, as I lay in bed, I heard it again. Not from the living room this time, closer. 3 deliberate knocks against my bedroom window. I pulled the curtains tighter, held my breath, and prayed it wouldn't notice. But even through the fabric, I could feel it standing there. Watching. It hasn't stopped since. Every few nights, the knocking returns, moving from room to room, testing each window. Sometimes I hear the faint drag of fingernails across the glass, as though it's trying to find a weakness. And the worst part is, I swear I can see its shadow against the curtains, taller than the frame, head tilted, hands spread wide. The rules were right, it can't come in if I don't look. But how long can I live like this? Every night holding my breath, praying the fabric doesn't slip, that I don't accidentally pull the curtains too far when I peek. Because here's the thing that keeps me up now, sometimes, when I wake in the middle of the night, I find the curtains move just slightly, an inch or two ajar. And I know I didn't leave them that way. The first time it happened, I tried to convince myself it was just me. Maybe I hadn't pulled them fully closed, maybe the rod was loose, maybe the fabric had shifted in the draft. But the second time, I woke to find them gaping wider, 6 inches this time, enough that the moonlight spilled onto the carpet in a pale stripe. I sat frozen in bed, my skin prickling as the realization hit me. The only way those curtains had opened was from the inside. I didn't move the rest of that night. I couldn't. I just sat there staring at that narrow gap, waiting for the sound of knuckles against glass that never came. But the silence was worse. It felt like something was already inside, standing so close I could almost feel the breath on my skin. It's gotten bolder since then. The knocking doesn't always happen anymore. Sometimes it's scratching, slow, deliberate, the sound of nails tracing a line across the glass from top to bottom. Once, I heard a long dragging squeal as though something wet and heavy was pressing its face against the window pane, leaving streaks. I didn't dare look. But in the morning, when I finally forced myself to peek, there were faint smudges on the outside of the glass, long streaks that didn't match any handprint I'd ever seen. 5 fingers, yes, but too long, too thin, and curved just slightly at the ends like claws. I've stopped sleeping properly. I keep every light in the house on, curtains drawn tight, and still the feeling persists, watched, measured, chosen. The thing outside isn't random. It doesn't just knock for anyone. It's patient, methodical. I feel it testing me, waiting for the moment I falter. Because I think that's all it needs, one mistake. One night where the curtain slipped too far, one blink too long while it stares through the glass, one acknowledgement that lets it know I see it. Last night was the worst yet. I woke to a noise that wasn't knocking or scratching, but breathing. Heavy, damp, too close. It was coming from the living room, and I just knew, that the curtains had been moved again. I crept to the doorway and froze. The curtains over the big bay window were open nearly all the way. And in the reflection on the glass, I saw it. Not directly, not face to face, but enough to steal the air from my lungs. A tall, skeletal figure hunched against the glass, head cocked, its glowing eyes fixed straight into the room. Its face was stretched too thin, its skin slick and gray, like it had been pulled tight over bone. The reflection of its mouth looked wrong, like it was smiling, but the lips didn't move naturally. I stumbled back into the hall, too afraid to breathe. The reflection stayed there for minutes that felt like hours. Then, slowly, the curtains began to close on their own, one side dragging across the rod as if invisible hands were pulling them shut. The moment they sealed, the breathing stopped. The silence that followed was so absolute I almost wished it would knock again, if only to prove it hadn't crossed over. Now I understand why people whisper about them. The knocking isn't a warning, it's a request. An invitation. And every time I find the curtains moved, I realize I'm closer to giving an answer. Because if it's already touching the curtains, if it's already inside enough to move them, then how much longer until it decides it doesn't need my permission anymore? I haven't slept tonight. The curtains are drawn, but I keep staring at them, waiting for the fabric to stir. And maybe it's just my eyes playing tricks in the lamplight, but I swear the bottom hem is shifting, like something brushing against it from the other side. My chest tightens as I stare, my ears straining for the faintest sound, the scrape of a nail, the rasp of knuckles against glass. But there's only silence. Silence so thick it feels unnatural, like the whole world is holding its breath on the other side of that window. I force myself to stand, though my legs are trembling. Slowly, carefully, I step toward the curtain. Each inch I cover feels like I'm walking into quicksand, the room stretching longer, darker, heavier. My hand rises, shaking, toward the fabric. I hesitate just before touching it, because what if I pull it back? What if they're standing there, face pressed to the glass, waiting for me to finally be foolish enough to give them a glimpse inside? I whisper to myself, it's nothing. Just the draft. But the air in the room is still. Too still. And then it happens. A sharp, deliberate knock. 1, 2, 3, slow, spaced out like a heartbeat. The sound reverberates through the glass and into my bones. My hand jerks back, and I stumble, nearly tripping over the rug. I clutch my chest, gasping, because it's not just a knock. It's confirmation. They're here. The curtain twitches again, this time unmistakably from the outside, as though invisible fingers are plucking the fabric. My voice catches in my throat. I want to scream, but some primal part of me knows better. If I make a sound, if I draw too much attention, maybe they'll think I'm ready. Maybe they'll think I'm willing to answer. I back away, step by step, until my calves hit the edge of the couch. I sink down, curling my knees to my chest like a child, never tearing my gaze from the curtain. The knocks come again. Louder. For this time. Measured. Patient. They're not asking for entry, they're promising persistence. And then, as if the world itself is mocking me, my lamp flickers. The shadows in the corners of the room stretch and bend, and in that half-second of stuttering light, I swear I see a silhouette pressed against the curtain, a long head, shoulders too narrow, arms that reach just a little too far down, ending in pale hands against the glass. The light steadies, and the curtain hangs still again. My heart hammers so hard it feels like it might burst. I can't move. I can't blink. I just sit there, frozen, waiting. And then I hear it, so faint I almost convince myself it's in my head. A whisper. A hiss. Right at the glass. Words I can't quite make out, but I know they're meant for me. I cover my ears, but the sound crawls through anyway, sliding into my mind, planting seeds of panic. The whisper stops. Silence reigns again. My body sags in relief, though I don't dare lower my hands. But then, from the quiet, I hear something far worse than knocking or whispering, the gentle scrape of the curtain rod as the fabric shifts again. Not pulled aside entirely, just tug. An inch more open than before. Enough for them to see in. Enough for them to watch me as I sit trembling in my own home. My throat burns as I choke back a sob. I know now, with a sinking clarity, that no matter how tightly I close those curtains, no matter how many locks I slide into place, they're going to keep knocking. They'll wait night after night, patient as time itself, until I make the mistake of looking back. Until I meet the eyes I know are there behind the glass. And when I do, the knocks won't be on the window anymore. They'll be on my walls, my doors, my skin.